Good evening and welcome to the Friday edition of the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope everybody's had a good week. It is Friday, June 8th. You work from home, people. At some point, every day just kind of blurs together. So it's easy to lose a month here or there. As a matter of fact, the fact that it's already June of 2018 is kind of scary. I hope everybody's had a good week. Good evening, Tillman. How are you? I'm doing reasonably well. So, before we get moving far, this has been a heck of a week. I say that a lot. We got a lot to talk about. With the G7 going on right now, it's going to be very interesting to see how much good for you. Good for you. Should always enjoy. If that's what you love to do, more power to you. Good evening, Blair. How are you, love? So remember, this is going out on both YouTube and Periscope at the same time, so I'll try and make sure that those of you who are on either platform I'll make sure that I make the comments from one to the other contextually appropriate. I guess that's the best way of looking at it. We've got an interesting problem coming up with the G7. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I can see everything that's happening. So Trump went in there this morning. By the way, he's leaving early, and then he's leaving like an underling in charge because that's how much he wants to spend with the leaders of Europe. And since he's already met with everybody in the last month, I mean, how much more can there really be to talk about? He did throw his opening stink bomb in, which was very interesting to say that he thought that Russia should be readmitted into the Gang of Eight. And I found that comment interesting. It's almost like he was throwing a bone towards the Italians, who then immediately jumped on the bandwagon and said the same thing. It's going to be hard for Emmanuel Macron of France to say no to that as well, since at this point, you know, he went to visit Putin at least twice in the last couple of months, and certainly was there at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum not 3 weeks ago. And then I'll be very surprised also if Merkel doesn't then join in on that as well, because at this point, it's him saying that is kind of doing what he would do to the Democrats, right? And that he does to the Democrats all the time is that he takes a position that they're for, and then they have to reflexively say, no, we're against it because we hate Trump. So he did that again today with marijuana, which I thought was brilliant, which I thought was fantastic. Again, Trump is proving himself to be exactly kind of what I expected. Great on domestic policy, and I'm not really sure what to make of his foreign policy at this point. I've got a link down below to a couple of my latest articles if you guys haven't read them over at my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. But more importantly, there's a link to the latest from Alistair Crook over at Strategic Culture Institute, and I highly recommend you read that. I spoke with him this morning on our private Slack server, and he just got back from Moscow, and basically, we believe we're on the same page as far as what's really going on here. There is no Putin-Trump collusion, not just from the criminal Mueller idiotic standpoint. I'm talking about from the 4D chess perspective of Trump and Putin working behind the scenes to create a grand bargain in the Middle East or this or that. Or anything. There's none of that going on. Trump is absolutely exactly what he appears to be and how he's treating Russia. And if you read Crook's article today that he posted today, you will get a better understanding it actually clarifies a lot of the things that I've been saying, but said it in a way that was even there's just more straightforward. And really do believe that this is what I've been saying is what's going to happen here, is that the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese are allowing Trump to overextend himself and create a classic kind of Russian cauldron. And it's going to be very interesting to watch it fail. And I'm making a prediction now that it's going to fail. Alistair Crook wouldn't go that far. He's like, I don't know whether he's going to be successful or not. I'm like, bullshit. He's going to be unsuccessful. And the reason he's going to be unsuccessful is because he's working against the forces of history, and he's working against the forces of economics. Crook took the perspective of Trump's statement about energy dominance to the bank as the overriding theme or the overriding idea animating his foreign policy at this point. And it's not a bad theory. As a matter of fact, I completely agree with the theory. I just don't think it squares with the economics. Okay. User 13, piped in and said it's great that Trump is helping to put a stake in the heart of the EU, which is beautiful, and you're right. But at the same time, with Trump saying that today, he's giving everybody the opportunity to say, okay, let's ditch the sanctions on Russia over Crimea. That doesn't square with the rest of his policy so far that's been happening across Europe. Good evening, Jen Johnson. How are you, love? So it's a strange thing for him to say that at this moment in time, because what are you saying? Okay, they get to be a part of the G8 again, but we're still going to keep sanctions on them over Crimea? Or that the EU, if they want to, if they don't want to get, taken back to the economic Stone Age? Because at this point, what Trump is honestly arguing for is the nuclear option in terms of global everything. Global economic everything. He is saying, I am going to sanction the world and cut the world off from the US dollar if you don't do what I tell you to do. Now, that's great, but that's like cutting off your nose to spite your head, unless your face. Because the United States economy is a global economy. It's not going to survive in any way, manner, shape, or form without people to trade with. So I've become very skeptical about where this is headed. Because in the end, the Europeans cannot rely on the United States being a net energy exporter to run their economy. It's not possible. If they wanted to run a third world economy, that would be fine. So user 13 pipes up and says that she agrees, but that the theory is that others are running his policy. Well, to some extent. I actually think he's almost completely complicit in his policy at this point. That's been the big change since April. So if this is the case, then perhaps this is his way of getting around the people who are trying to control him. In some ways, yes, but I don't see him doing that. I actually think Crook's argument is better. Is that what Trump is trying to do is make the world beholden to U.S. energy, and then therefore still have complete control over their economies. Not going to work. Because the United States cannot generate oil and gas at prices that are even remotely consistent to what the Russians can do. Now, Buck, manufacturing is going to move towards robots. There's no way around that. That has nothing to do with China or Europe or tariffs or anything else. That's just labor efficiency. That's where it's going. Okay? Right. And we will, and user 13 is correct. We would yank back our supply to the rest of the world when it suits us. That's what we're doing with the dollar right now. Nope. You're not actually, we don't like what's going on here, so we're going to yank back hard on dollar liquidity, and we're going to bomb your markets. This is what we're doing to Turkey right now. Don't buy those S-400s, or we'll destroy your currency. Yes. Joanne Leon pipes up and reminds everybody that tomorrow China and that the SCO meets, that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has a 2-day summit. And the interesting part about this is that dude, I'm not, look, I can't help you if you can't get past the fact that that's where manufacturing is going. It's not a matter of want or need or desire or anything else. That's where manufacturing is going. The folks who used to work in manufacturing should be in trade schools, welding, plumbing, masonry. This cannot be roboticized in the near future. Yeah, to some extent. We got 3D printing houses now. They're 3D printing shotcrete houses. I know smart kids should be looking at trade school. This is like Mike Rowe 101. I mean, you can get angry about the shift that's happening, but it's the same argument that was made at the turn of the 20th century when, you know, with all the buggy wagons. Well, if we move to cars, then what about the wagon wheel guys? What are the horseshoe guys? What are the blacksmiths going to do if they don't need horseshoes anymore? They're going to have to get retrained. They're going to have to figure something else out. It's just the way it is. It's called progress, and it's going to happen. Okay? It doesn't matter. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Dude, I don't know. Jordan, you talk to Jordan Peterson. He says that everybody under the IQ of 83 in this country doesn't have a job. I'm not sure I agree with that, but let's just take his argument as let's just take his conclusion as correct. No, you're going to have a permanent, that winds up being a permanent underclass that's going to have to be taken care of in some way. We got to do it through private charity, or we can do it through welfare. Okay? Carpentry has not been roboticized. There's plenty of jobs for people to do. Farming is already roboticized. Not small scale farming, but they won't be able to compete. I mean, truthfully, small scale farmers can't compete, and they certainly can't compete in a domestic economy with massive barriers to entry. Okay? You want to stop 90% of this, all the crap that we're talking about? Get rid of the fucking central banks. Okay? Get rid of debt-based currencies that give government and banks power that they don't earn. Because that's what's going on here. All of this stuff is an expression of a bad monetary system. They're all just symptoms of a bad monetary system. Everybody's been crowded out. Everybody's been crowded out. The government has crowded out almost 30% of our economy. GDP, what, 25 to 30% of GDP is freaking government spending? That's the government crowding out private sector. Right? I mean, so I don't want to get caught up in that side of that side of things, because it's irrelevant. Okay? The bigger problem is what happens when Trump's crazed tariff policy is called. Not just tariffs, but sanctions. And burning down and burning down the global, and threatening to burn down through a nuclear option the entire global trading system. When you've got people like Larry Kudlow in his ear saying that this is something that can be done. When We have oil markets. What Crick was arguing, this is not, it's something it's a really good article this morning. It was like, because it's all stuff that I knew, but I hadn't really had a chance to just like put it all together in like one, because you get focused on so many little things that you forget sometimes to look at other avenues. It's just why you need to read on a consistent basis everything that's happening and what everybody. Won't new trade policies just create different industry winners and losers? Yes. You'll take jobs from one hand and you'll give them to somebody else. Are China's main importers being punished by the Fed hike? Not if the Chinese allow the yuan to devalue alongside their other trading partners. So if the Malaysian ringgit drops by 10% and China devalues by 10%, then not really. Okay. It's all about China's going to manage the yuan's effective exchange rate, what's called the real effective exchange rate. They're more focused on that than they are about the U.S. dollar Chinese yuan exchange rate. That's not really what's important to them. As a matter of fact, it also doesn't set policy. Hasn't set policy in China for like almost close to 10 years now. China manages their rear. They don't manage their U.S. dollar exchange rate. Right. I mean, there's little else I can say about that. So, but when we talk about the G7, Europe, whether Russia should come back in or not. So Trump's comments, getting back to what Trump said this morning, it's almost like he's opening the door to say, okay, yeah, go ahead and end the sanctions in July on Russia. Good news for you. That's not going to be good for his other plans. Well, in the same breath, he's got the State Department out there saying we're going to put a full government approach to stopping the Nordstream 2 pipeline. I mean, is that CIA, Treasury, State, military? What? Is it an idle threat? Not when you see the Netherlands and Switzerland honoring Ukraine seizing Gazprom's assets over an award from a Swedish arbitration court, which effectively said, which was the purest expression of socialism in a court ruling I'd ever saw, which basically said Gazprom's in the right, but they owe Ukraine $2.6 billion, or Naftagaz $2.6 billion, because Naftagaz is poor. From each according to their need means to each according to their needs. And now Ukraine is running around at behest. Now Ukraine is running around Europe trying to seize Gazprom's assets to get paid. Because the Ukrainian government is about ready to collapse because it has no money. The IMF won't bail them out any further. The European Union won't dump any more money in them. And the United States is trying to figure out how they can keep Poroshenko in power another year and a half so that they can launch a massive invasion of the Donbass and force Putin to cross the border. To do what? To then complain that Putin's the aggressor in Europe and everybody and have Latvia scream bloody murder again? I mean, what the hell? Who believes any of this shit? I know, tell you exactly who believes this shit. Stupid MAGA-pedes. That's who believes this shit. No, I don't think Putin will do anything more than what he's already done. What that means is you'll see more Russian mercenaries in there. You'll see even more Russian armor in there. But the Ukrainian army, I'm read multiple reports now of, the deserters of the UAF are just at an all-time high. Would the Chinese model survive having a middle class? Its current version, no. It'll have to open up. Its current version of state-controlled capitalism won't really survive in the in the current environment. It won't survive into the future. It'll have to become much more liberalized over time. But they want it to happen on their terms at their pace, as opposed to our terms at our pace. Same thing with Russia. Different cultures, different people, same incentives though, because people are ultimately people, and they still respond to incentives in the same way. But what we're looking at in the near term is, now that we've definitely have a sovereign debt crisis happening in Europe. It's obvious that the ECB has been playing games with Italy, like stepping in one day and buying some debt, and then stepping completely out of the market for 2 or 3 days to try and threaten them. That's right. That's what actually happened in the Italian bond markets last week, or in that week between when Mattarella said no to the coalition and then the coalition formed that Friday, and those couple of days right after Memorial Day. Yeah, the ECB wasn't in the market. They stated it kind of obliquely, kind of almost off the record. Yeah, we weren't in there buying Italian debt that day. That's Draghi's way of saying, yeah, this is what happens if you don't do what we tell you to do. We're going to let your bond market explode. It didn't work. Salvini just turned right around and handed him another set of cabinet ministers that was just as bad as the first set and said, fuck a whole lot of you. Now, I've said many, many times, you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. You owe the bank $1 trillion, it's the bank's problem. Well, guess what? In the foreign currency corporate debt markets, the currency you denominate your debt in, that country owns you. Because you are not in control of the value of the currency that you've denominated your debt in. And that's what Turkey's dealing with right now. But it's not what Russia's dealing with right now. Because Russia doesn't have any dollar-denominated debt. They got rid of it all. They've got a lot of euro-denominated debt, though. So Putin's sitting back going, look, we can do a deal. You can choose to fight the forces of economics and history. Or you can let the euro fall by 30%, bail out, change the rules of the fiscal compact, and we'll be happy to pay our debt back in 30% on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar. Will Italy veto Russia sanctions shortly? It's coming up in July, at the end of this month, or early July. And the Trump statement this morning is almost, I think, is giving them a pass, giving them the green light to go ahead and do so. Merkel wants them raised, right? The German voters want them raised. AfD wants them raised. Horst Seehofer, her coalition partner, wants them raised. Wants them lifted. Sorry, lifted is, I guess, the proper word. Okay? All of Europe wants them lifted because they want to do business with the Russians again. So, the only one that doesn't want it is the Americans. User 13 asked the question, can we get out of the owning the other country thing and focus on the homeland? No. Don't you understand? That's the problem. Trump wants everything. He wants to bring all the troops home, yet still maintain financial and political leverage over everybody. That's the danger of what Donald Trump actually is. That should scare the fucking piss out of you. Again, read Alistair Crook's article from this morning. It's really important that you grasp that idea. Trump wants to bring the troops home. That sounds great to all of us. It sounds great to me, this libertarian. It sounds great to most of the people listening to my voice. It sounds great to most of the people on this side of on this side of the political aisle. Great. But at the same time, he doesn't want to give up any of the power. still wants to maintain a global empire around the world, but he just wants to do it using soft power. And he wants to use control of the energy markets to do it, but he can't. The petro-yuan contract is killing them. It's killing that idea. It's why that thing is so dangerous. Yes, Buck, you're right. The deep state doesn't want to lift it either, any more than the deep state wants a reunified China or reunified Korea. But no, that should scare the shit out of you because, Buck, that is globalism. It's like the perfect version of globalism. Because you make it more efficient by not having to maintain 120, 150 bases around the world. It's all unmanned. It's all drones and rockets, missiles. You don't need much of an army for that. You can just have the robots do that shit. Yep, Drag 68, you're absolutely right. The only people who want the Russian sanctions are Ukraine, the Baltic Minnow countries, Poland, and the US. To that list, I would add just the other one is Poland. And yes, Step, you can't, the petrodollar you can't escape current US foreign policy without fixing it first, and it is getting fixed. Iran accepts euros for their oil. Yeah, automation of globalism. Think about it. And the bank's in charge of everything. That was always the plan. Yeah, so, unfortunately, the military is an employer. Should have state militias. Don't worry about it, guys. This stuff's not going to last more than another. This is not a winning strategy. But I want you to understand how dangerous the thinking is on the part of Trump when it comes to this. Okay? And this is really what he's laid out the entire time. He just kind of ignored it because maybe. No, we're not going to be. We should have people in the military. That's what we should be doing with them? Really? I'm sure they can figure out other things to do. When we're not, because that's just a net drain, dude. The military is just welfare for young it's just welfare for young men. Or men and women, but mostly for young men. It's welfare. It's just another big government. War is just another big government program. Given the state of our culture, given the state of our arts, given the state of our culture, yeah. People are great and people are creative and they will find things to do. They always will. They will figure out ways to make money because there will be a value. There will always be an arbitrage because there will always be value created somewhere that someone will want to get a hold of. Now, I didn't say global automation. I said automation of globalism, meaning you automate the military portion of the globalist dream of of autocratic control and universal serfdom. Remember, that's what they want. Oh yeah, the neocons that came from the left. Drag? They're Trotskyites. There's lots of stuff for us to do. We have $2 trillion worth of infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. Doesn't need to be rebuilt on government contract bids either. It can be rebuilt in the private sector properly. With the novel concept of not violating people's property rights to get that shit done. But the petrodollar is losing slowly but it's losing. The Russians don't take dollars for their oil. The Iranians are willing to take anything that people are willing to offer them. China is fighting against the democratic time bomb as well. But there's a lot of Chinese people. They haven't even begun to reach the growth phase of their labor efficiency, public-private partnerships. Yeah, let's bring up Adam let's bring up Adam the fucking retard. I'm sorry, Adam the drunk retard. Because public-private partnerships are gonna they're the way, man. I'm like, they're fucking stupid. They're just big wealth. They're just more wealth transfer. You believe public-private partnerships are good? I got a bridge in downtown Saigon to show you. Yes, Step. What they're doing is, you got to remember that any country that is looking at a demographic time bomb, Japan was looking at the same thing. Before Abe took power, the Japanese yen was trading at around 75 to the dollar. Japanese corporates were going out and they were buying up Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian, Thai, Malaysian, Indonesian labor at unbelievable rates. They were using those very strong yuan to go into these countries and buy cheap labor and then bring the profits back home to their aging population. It was working beautifully. Yes, I got a bone to pick with Adam the retard. And so what happened? Japan was beginning to break away from the United States in terms of the way it was conducting its business. It signed a bilateral trade agreement with China. They both agreed to hold their bonds in each other's foreign exchange reserves. You hear about this, did you? No, what you did hear about is the Japanese then, after Shinzo Abe was brought to power, because the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan is a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA, since they formed it when the CIA was the fucking OSS. And picked a fight with China over the Senkaku Islands. The freaking CIA has been sitting on that for years. Well, we need to inflame Chinese nationalism. How do we do that? Have the Japanese lay claim to the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. Yeah, that'd do it. Within 3 days, Chinese were like throwing rocks through Toyota car dealerships, and both countries weren't talking to each other anymore. And it was dogs and cats living together. And Abe had devalued the yuan by 25% in like 3 months. And all that ended. And Japan was right back in the U.S.'s sphere of influence because they had the nerve to step outside the lines for just a little while. And in doing so, sealed their own fate. Because after Europe goes south, Japan is next. Then the United States. The United States isn't going to blow up here. It's going to blow up last because it's the core economy. It's the one that all the freaking trade is denominated in. Yes, I know there's plenty, but the Japanese are sitting on such a massive pile of debt, and the Bank of Japan is in such a, oh my God, it's such a freaking mess that there's no way they survive this. So I just don't think everybody sees what's actually coming. So once this starts to lever up, it becomes a gyre that spirals out of freaking control, and you can't stop it. And Trump is right in wanting to break down the trade barriers between the United States and Canada and Mexico and the EU and all this. Of course, they're all mercantilists. I agree with him. I have no problem with any of that. And I understand why he's doing what he's doing. What I don't agree with is this idea that we can still continue to have our empire at the same time. He's asking to have his cake and eat it too. Doesn't work that way. Not going to work. He wants a trade. He wants balanced trade. Triffin's paradox. We need to, in order to maintain the world's reserve currency, we kind of need to run a trade deficit to export dollars, to liquefy global trade. That's how it works. You want the world's reserve currency so that you can control the global banking system, and you can pull back on liquidity whenever you want to yank everybody's fucking chain. You got to run a trade deficit. I mean, I don't know what the hell Larry Kudlow thinks he's selling this guy, but this is not going to work. I mean, that guy's such a friggin' couch cushion. It's not even funny. He's going to still sit there and talk about the friggin' Laffer curve and the fucking Laffer curve, for Christ's sake. I'm like, this shit was debunked 30 fucking years ago. But whatever. I've met Kudlow. He's not the brightest guy in the room. He's a patriot. He's not the brightest guy in the room. So this is the force of history. This is the force of economic incentives. And the world cannot afford to have the United States be the world's biggest oil producers, or oil be not the world's biggest oil producer, but the world's biggest oil exporter, so it can maintain dollar supremacy while its banking system is over levered to the hilt and we're $21 trillion in debt. He does have one foot in the grave. Him and Charles Krauthammer. Oh, by the way, spare not a tear for Krauthammer, the warmonger. For him. Please don't. I agree. Dumb Patriot is far better than Gary Cohn. Doesn't make him good. It just makes him better. It's like the difference between strychnine and hemlock. I drank what? No. Actually, it's more like strychnine, or it's more like hemlock and arsenic. Yeah, no, strychnine and hemlock, because strychnine is really just an arsenical-based pesticide anyway. It's just arsenic. Just a really poisonous version of it. Exactly. No tears for neocon chicken hawks who destroy entire nations. Krauthammer is, and worse than that, Krauthammer is unbelievably arrogant. He truly believes he's the smartest guy in the room. It's so obnoxious that it's, God. Oh my God. It's so obnoxious, it's not funny. These guys act like they know so much more than they actually do. It's really quite sad. He said, yeah. Well, I mean, he works at Fox. He's beyond smug. He's so smug he would fit at home on the left. They did try desperately to sack Russia, and they almost completely succeeded, and then Putin took power. He's a great writer, but he's not a nice guy. Oh yeah. They're all heavily agenda-laden assholes, and you just have to remember that. And they don't give a shit about you. It's a big club and you ain't in it. Well, Carlin. But step to your point, they had Russia on the ropes in 1999. It destroyed the ruble. They put them on an IMF, heparin lock, drip feed with a heparin lock. They thought they had him dead to rights, and then Putin came to power and started nationalizing Yukos and kicking out NGOs and kicking out the American banks and the whole 9 yards, and they're still angry with him about it. I mean, Goldman Sachs is still trying to get money out of Putin for Yukos. Okay? These are the people that got oil concessions and blocks for less than pennies on the dollar. That's not good enough. We're still owed this because we own these shares in Yukos and what? Bullshit. Putin said no. Those assets belong to the Russian people. Fuck you. No. Go home. They're still arguing with about it. They're still bitching about it. There's still outstanding lawsuits out there over this. It's insane how unbridled their unbridled greed, their chutzpah. It's unbelievable. Some of what they're doing is improvising. I will agree with that, without a doubt. But Trump has a plan, and that plan has emerged. And I want you to I'm sorry. Quick Sal just said GM bondholders should have traded for Yukos ADRs. I know. Oh God, that shit's high comedy right there, guys. Okay. So, but Trump's not improvising on this front. This is his plan. And it should scare you a little bit that he thinks he can have the empire, he can keep the empire without the empire, and it's not going to work because no one's going to stand for it. And there's too many ways to leak. There's too many ways to leak capital away from him, and we're too vulnerable on the other side of it because he doesn't truly understand economics well enough to know that when the dollar gets really freaking strong, he's screwed, and he better hope that this strong dollar ramps up slowly so that he can get reelected in 2020. Because it could easily gut the economy by then. But every day that that this moves forward with the dollar still, with the euro still above $1.15, is another day that gets pushed farther off into the future before the real ugly stuff starts to happen. This aggression will not stand. Would that it were that simple. You guys need to see Hail Caesar, I'm telling you. I mean, no discussion of communism and movies is possible without watching Hail Caesar. Have to watch Hail Caesar. It's laugh out loud. It's spit your coffee across the room funny. Okay? So, the Chinaman is not the issue. All right, what else we got? 9:42. Yeah, when we're down to Big Lebowski quotes, you know this thing's just about finished. Anybody else got anything else they want to talk about in particular? Because I could use an early night. Have you watched SEAL Team yet? I mean, like SEAL Team 6? Emerging markets. You want me to talk about emerging markets? Be happy to. Oh, the Brits. Okay. So emerging markets. So we're getting a taste of what's coming, right? With what's happening in Turkey. Indonesia, Malaysia, they're in trouble too. India, not happy about what's going on. Oh, the Brits' cultural shift is going to cause the whole thing to. Let me finish the emerging markets point, and then I'll go on to the Brits. all the emerging markets are beginning to feel the pain of a strengthening dollar, and not just the strengthening dollar because you can't quite measure it by the USDX, because the USDX is a fundamentally flawed index, right? The US trade weighted US dollar index is fundamentally flawed. It, by the way, has no yuan exposure. It's like 52% the euro. It's mostly the euro, Japan, and Britain. Oh no, I haven't watched it. I'm sorry, I don't watch CBS, so I don't have TV. If it's not something I can download off the Pirate Bay, or if it's not on Netflix, I haven't seen it. Or Amazon Prime, because I have both. But if what I saw today from Netflix, and I'll get back to emerging markets in a minute, where I think somebody posted up on our Slack channel today about the a new cartoon marketed for kids on Netflix with the trans heroes. Are they out of their freaking minds? Do they really want to gut what's left of the center from their customer base? I mean, if they want to self-immolate like this, that's great. Reed Hastings is going to run that company into the ground, bar none, or he's going to get deposed, which is what the board should do. But emerging markets are already starting to feel significant pain over the lack of dollar liquidity in the markets, and good evening, Gigi. How are you, love? And sponsored by NAMBLA. What, the North American Marlon Brando Lookalike Association? Oh, it's superhero drag queens. It's even worse, right? It's not even trans. It's superhero drag queens, right? So it's like, oh my god. Okay. But dollar liquidity is really, really tight right now, and it's only going to get worse. And you continue to watch things like LIBOR, and watch things like what I watch every week is the Fed's balance sheet report to see what the central banks are doing, how much they're selling, or if they're continuing to sell into dollar strength. And because that's the important part. That's the important indicator. Because that's what if they're having to defend their currencies, or beginning to defend their currencies, then that's putting stress on that. They're doing so because the corporations are searching for dollars in order to pay back debt, and they're selling the local currency. So watch for that. It's going to get worse for them, and they're going to get crushed in this. The ones that have the highest exposure to dollar-denominated corporate debt are the ones that are going to get crushed the hardest relative to their foreign exchange reserves. Okay. Now, certain countries like Turkey, I think, are going to get some support because they're too important politically, geopolitically, to allow to fail. Will the Indians start moving into gold even more than they already have, or will they start liquidating it to get by? Well, aside from the fact that Modi, for the most part, outlawed private gold ownership and is asking the Indian culture to give up their gold, which I don't think any of them really have. They've made it really, really difficult, I think, to buy more gold, and that's part of the reason why they've. But it's a cultural thing in India. They will absolutely buy gold if they can get their hands on it, and if they can't get their hands on it legally, they will get it through the black market. But remember that Modi has moved in very much the globalist direction by trying to outlaw cash in order to suck, because he's desperate to balance the budget and get the country's finances under control, because it's a mess, and it's just a way to search for to shake down for more taxes. And the same thing's happening in Europe. So if Europe is not immune to what's going on, emerging markets are going to get crushed. Now, the Brits. Let's make it really simple. Because the less I talk about Britain at this point, the happier it makes me. If Brexit is betrayed, the United Kingdom will not last the decade, meaning by 2028. More likely 2024, 2025. If they're betrayed by their political class completely, it will cause a complete dissolution of the United Kingdom. And it won't matter if they figured out how to betray Brexit and keep the UK in the EU, because there won't be a United Kingdom anymore. There will be an all-out civil war. And the same thing's going to happen here. But it's got to happen the farther we push down, the farther each side pushes down their own ideological path. I mean civil war in terms of they've been disarmed, that's fine. But like everything else, they were disarmed in Ireland too. Guns are easy to get a hold of. But I'm not even talking that. Because if Brexit is betrayed, then they're not going to be able to get through they're going to still be tied to the European Union. And when they're tied to the European Union, as the sovereign debt crisis unfolds, they're going to get bankrupted, and there are going to be public lynchings of members of parliament. Remember, the cops and the military decide what's going to happen. When the people go into open revolt, if they're not getting paid either, that's always the trick. So, remember that. We know what's going to happen here in the United States. We know that the minute the left pushes too far on the West Coast or up north, look, if you look at what's happening today, and you can see it in the culture, you can see it in the Star Wars box office receipts, you can see it in the you can see it in the way people are reacting on their Twitter feeds to every little provocation on both the left and the right. They're not talking to each other anymore. Not talking to each other anymore. And anybody who attempts to communicate with either side is a cuck. Or a Nazi. That's where we are. You'll notice, by the way, tonight, speaking of the Nazis, that the Nazis aren't here. I finally went into my Periscope app and just deleted all those guys. And blocked all those guys manually. So they can't come in tonight and pollute the airwaves. Couldn't find Grinchy because he never followed me. By the way, you're still not welcome, fucktard. Buy guns and ammo. Help align me out. All right. That I shouldn't have said. That's bad. All right. Well, so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. Yeah, no, you want to choose love here, not hate. You want to choose love. Kanye West made the right choice. He really did. And that's, you want to laugh at them, not get angry by them. Get angry with them anyway. Laugh at them. Nothing makes a person who is crazed with ideology, insane, more than laughing derisively at them. Nothing. Dismissing them as a crank is the best. How do we know the Belt and Road isn't just an economic hitman strategy employed by China? We don't. But if you, yeah, it's the Zelensky tactic, always amplify and ridicule. It's a good question, Tyler. And will there be a part of that? Probably. Will it morph into that at some point in the future? Possibly. I don't think the early stages of it are. I think what China wants more than anything else, and the same thing that Russia and Iran and everybody else, what they want we're going to get into that. We'll get into that in a second. What they want is a stable Central Asia, because a stable Central Asia stabilizes them. China's not interested in running the world through the PBOC. They don't want the world's reserve currency. None of them are arguing for a world's reserve currency. I think that's part of that's the thing that should make you sanguine about Belt and Road, make you positive about it, because they're not looking for ignoring / amplifying them. Either way, Joanne, it's very similar. Just the best tactic to deal with somebody who is fueled by ideology and rage is to either laugh at them or walk away from them, because then they can't take that. Bullies, when you're dealing with a bully, walk away from them or laugh at them. At that point, they have to either punch you in the mouth and subjugate you, or fulminate and explode. So user 13's comment is, Belt and Road is partially an economic hitman style tactic, but don't forget 1 billion PAM people need space and natural resources. That's more likely to play. Moreover, I just don't see it as, if China was talking about stealing the US's thunder and making it their own, I wouldn't be down with it. But they're not. They keep saying we want a multipolar world. We want an equal seat at the table. I know they work. Trump uses them all the time. He says that the right needs to turn Zelensky back on the left. The tactics work. Of course they work. Trump does it every day. Trump is giving you, he's the ultimate shit lord. He's the ultimate shit poster. He's fantastic. I marvel at the man's ability to drive them insane. Fantastic. I mean, just, professional. This is just, professional respect here. So, now, as far as Trump may support defederalizing pot offenses, it's fantastic. It's the best thing I've heard. That's another great thing I heard out of it. One, it shuts up Jeff Sessions. Two, it's him. Who's he targeting with that? He's targeting all the incarcerated black people in this country who are in prison on nonviolent drug offenses for pot or whatever. I mean, all of this is good. You do away with that. You do away with the criminalization of pot. You take a tremendous chunk out of the cost of government. All the police. So much of our police state is built around the drug war. Local police corruption is built around the drug wars, built around the asset forfeiture laws and the drug war. It's awful. Brilliant. It's exactly what you need to do. It's exactly what he needs to do. And right now, as paying it down, paying forward Kanye West, 2 months later, paying down Kanye West by saying, well, let's get rid of the drug war. Let's get rid of the federal drug war on pot. Not everything, just pot. Why is China militarizing islands in the South China Sea? For the same reason everybody else is. Because the United States, for the same reason as everything else, because the United States continues to lay claim over the it's a way to provide a buffer zone for them and to push back the U.S. 7th Fleet. They're doing it for the oil rights out there. They're doing it to continue to lay claims over things like the Paracel Islands, which they won fair and square from Vietnam in the 70s. So it's like everything else. Why should it scare you that China's putting military bases in the South China Sea when we have military bases in South Korea? Right. Think of again, back to the drug war point. Think about how much of asset forfeiture, okay, would go away. Think about how much local law, I'll tell you right now, local law enforcement would start enforcing speed limits a lot tighter until people finally got fucking tired of it. Yeah, the police are absolutely against legalizing pot because it's a great way for them to make money. It's a great way for them to shake down whoever they want, that they don't, undesirables in their own. The police are always against everything. And that's a good thing. I'm sorry, but pissing off the police is a good thing. We have too much policing in this country. We don't need this. Part of the reason why the police have become so militarized is because the drug war created the economic incentive for once you start down that path of violence, violence will always dominate. Okay? If the profit margins are high enough to use violence to protect your business, then you will use violence to protect your business. Since the government is using violence to try and stop your business, you are going to meet that with more violence. Okay, the minute you take the threat of violence away, i.e., removing the illegality of it, you now completely realign the economic incentives, and the violence itself, the violence level drops dramatically. Once the violence level drops dramatically, now the need for a militarized police force drops dramatically. So now, if Trump can get control of the CIA and get rid of the poppy fields and the global opium trade, well, again, it's another part of the problem. How many people have been shot dead on drug warrants and innocent people and all of that stuff? She's right. Okay? Couldn't you argue that you're transferring the deaths from one sector to another? What do you mean? No, I'm saying that the level of violence drops dramatically. Because now we won't need to have the police. Over the course of time, the economic incentives will not be there for police to maintain the level of militarization that they have. And then at that point, right. But at that point, one-fifth of millennial deaths are because of drugs. Sure. And a lot of that has to do with structural unemployment, not being able to find jobs, not having any hope, not understanding, not having any ethos or moral center, there's so many other things that go into it. It's not a singular issue, but it has been a driver of a degradation of our culture. Okay? So you've got to get rid of it in order to have a chance for the culture to move back in the other direction. Okay? And if you want an example, and the clearest example that I can give you of a massive change in trend from despair to acceptance of reality is Russia. Alcoholism in Russia was killing men off at rates that was unbelievable in the 90s. They had nothing else to do, but vodka was cheap. Deaths due to alcohol poisoning and deaths due to accidental suicide or this, that, and everything, it dropped by like 80% since Putin's took power. We have a complete cultural breakdown in every way. We've got rapacious, User 13 brings up the point about rapacious drug companies pushing opioids on people, pushing all sorts of crap on people, making them crazy, over-medicating them. When the truth of the matter is that if we ate decent freaking food and most people were on a ketogenic diet, 90% of the freaking health problems we have in this country would go away. Being a square with some religion isn't a bad way to be. No, it really isn't. Yes. People turn to drugs in despair. They've got nothing else. It's all a function of the destructive monetary system. They're all just symptoms of the structural imbalance created by the current debt-based monetary system, which rolls capital, which rolls your profit from your labor up to the banks who didn't earn a fucking thing, who didn't do a goddamn thing to earn that money other than buy some fucking debt and then issue more debt to you at a higher interest rate and take the fucking vig. They didn't save anything. They didn't earn anything. They didn't build anything. Come on, you've never been depressed in your life. What do you do when you're depressed? Do you stress eat? Do you drink? Do you smoke more? Do you get baked? What do? You sit on the couch in your underwear and watch TV? Not shave? What do? Watch porn? Whatever. What's your gig? What do you do when you're depressed? We all get depressed. It's a terrible thing. They're arbitrage grifters. It's a great way of saying it. User 13, I don't even drink anymore. I eat clean and feel so much better physically. I don't watch TV and I'm better emotionally and stress-wise. Bingo. I drink every once in a while, but very rarely because for the most part, I still eat too many carbs. So that means I can't drink alcohol, even though I should probably have a drink at least twice a week. Joanne says, I've been told by young recovering addicts that they moved to heroin because it was one, plentiful, and two cheap. All of the above, Jen? Fair enough. You'd be a good time. You're welcome in Florida whenever you want. I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. No, seriously. Yeah, I know, guys. We've all been touched by it at some level. We've all been touched by it at some level, in every way. My mom worked when I was growing up. My mom was in charge of nursing at a small psychiatric hospital in my hometown. They moved into, first it was kind of it was really just a private home for rich schizophrenics, right? That's where IBM used to send all of their, where IBM and a lot of the other corporates, they would send their people, their retirees and their whatnot, they would send them there for years. This is what they did. This was, by the way, the first mental hospital in the United States that did not have bars on the window in my hometown. place called Falkirk Hospital, Central Valley, New York. Mom was head of nursing there from 1976 until the place closed in 1988. And they started taking in drug addicts and doing drug counseling eventually at some point. It was the beginning of the end, but she worked with and treated and dealt with 15-year-old heroin addicts all the time. I'll miss Anthony Bourdain too. I didn't particularly like his politics, but he was very good at what he did. He was very interesting. I've watched a lot of his stuff. Politics sucked. My first thought this morning, unfortunately, was now we've had 2 prominent suicides in a week. Who are they covering for? Or who are they covering up? Step asks, post-Putin Russia, unthinkable? Yes, not unthinkable. Just at the end of his next term. Putin will be 74 or something like that. At the end of his next term, he'll be gone. His job now is to set Russia up for the future and watch him very carefully to see who he's grooming to be his successor in the next. Yeah. Methadone is worse than heroin. Remember that my dad was NYPD. My mom was head of nursing at a psychiatric hospital. I've heard it all, folks. Yeah, Kate Spade did commit suicide, I think. You got a foil lining under that hat? Only the best, baby. Reynolds heavy duty. Lavrov, I don't think wants. No, Lavrov wanted to retire. Tyler. Frankly, Putin wouldn't let him. Okay. All right, I think we're at the hour mark. Hour and 5 minute mark. It's about time for me to get going. So, y'all take care. You have a good weekend. Tomorrow, we should be publishing this month's newsletter tomorrow. We were working on it this afternoon, and we should just about be finished with it. You should be getting the emails in your inbox tomorrow. So, yeah, there are never any coincidences in politics. So, all I know is I live in the world which says I live in a cynic's world. It's a terrible place to live. Thank God my wife is awesome, and thank God my child is awesome. You guys take care. We'll talk soon. I don't think I'm gonna get online I don't think I'll be on again over the weekend. Monday night at 8. All right. Yeah, because I got a bunch of stuff I got to write a piece for Strategic Culture this weekend, and I've got to do something else. You guys take care. We'll talk soon. Oh, and last thing before I sign off, congratulations to the Washington Capitals and to fucking Alex Ovechkin, who is, by the way, the best pure goal scorer in the history of the NHL. Not Gretzky. Even Gretzky would tell you that. Ovi's the man. And it's so glad to finally see him win a cup because by God, if any God he deserved it, it's him. All right, you guys take care.